Welcome to our volunteer management training video. We are going to touch on some tips and tools that you can use on the 9 Health Fair website. Now, volunteers began signing up around February 1st for the spring fairs and August 1st for the fall fairs. We need to regularly check back on the website to see when they sign up. We do this by going to the 9 Health Fair website. We go to the home page and we click on login in the upper right hand corner of the screen. You're going to enter your email and your password. Then we need to go to our coordinator dashboard. From your dashboard, you're able to see if the volunteers are assigned or unassigned, and then we need to click on the volunteer management tool. As volunteers sign up, we need to call or email them as soon as possible. Every few days is a good time to check in. We need to make sure they don't move on to another opportunity.
And it's really important to interview all volunteers via email or phone to make sure that they're actually qualified for the positions that they're requesting. There's a great online resource guide that has a list to all the questions to ask for both medical and non-medical volunteers. Resources is an option we can access once we've logged on as a site coordinator. This can be found by clicking on the word resources at the top of your coordinator dashboard. We have so many helpful tools to utilize here, including additional trainings created for you surrounding the website and its functionalities.
Oh, very nice. Now, don't we also have to check the credentials of the medical volunteers?
Yeah, that's a really great point. There are steps to follow on the website to make sure that everybody's license and certifications are up to date. This includes EMTs, paramedics, doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals. The medical coordinator should use the DORA site to check medical licenses, as well as ask phlebotomists how recently they've completed the 25 successful sticks.
Okay.
As this has to have occurred in the last 6 months for a phlebotomist to participate in a 9 Health Fair. Also, communication is really important with volunteers. With the new 9 Health Fair website, though, you can email groups of volunteers directly from the website, but it's important to remember to include your email address so they have a place to respond to. There is a specific training on how to do this that's found on the Resource Coordinator dashboard.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. The online resource guide even has sample emails, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you want to contact your volunteers. And we recommend contacting them every other week or monthly. It is also important to send information about individual stations or screenings ahead of time, and make sure that they complete the trainings prior to arriving at the 9 Health Fair. The information can also be found in the resource guide that we've been talking about.
It sounds like the resource guide is a really helpful tool.
Yes, it is. Now, what about the day of the fair, things like food? What are we going to do about that?
Well, several months before the fair is the best time to start organizing food and talking to businesses to try to have them donate. Many businesses will donate the food to the fair, but you have to arrange this ahead of time.
Okay.
Try to get some snacks for volunteers at the fair, but remember to instruct them to only eat in the volunteer break room.
Good point.
Many volunteers would also probably appreciate a light lunch as the fair ends to thank them for their time.
So how is our site supposed to know how many volunteers they're supposed to have the day of the fair?
That's a great question. To do this, we'll need to look at the screenings that we're offering and look at how many medical and non-medical volunteers each of those screenings requires. There is a volunteer estimator spreadsheet in the resource section on the website. This has a lot of useful tools in it. We'll also need to make sure that we have enough ambassadors that's going to welcome our participants and guide them through our fair.
Okay.
Have you seen the ambassador training on the video?
Yes, I have watched it, and there is actually a lot of other helpful training videos that I saw on other subjects.
Planning for volunteers by reviewing the screenings that you're going to offer and following the volunteer estimator spreadsheet is really important. Having too many volunteers can lead to them being really bored and unhappy, but having too few can stretch your workforce too thin.
Right, that's a good point. Also, it's important to send confirmation emails to all our volunteers to make sure that they are still planning on coming. People forget. Now, all the protocols are available on PDFs. I've seen them on the website, so we can send those to our volunteers ahead of time.
Yeah, and make sure that each one of our volunteers has their protocol in hand at the fair. I'm going to make a copy of the protocols and have them available at each station. You should also have a copy of the most up-to-date volunteer list with the assignments at check-in. That way you can remind people of where they're going.
Oh, that's a good point. It is also a good idea to have medical volunteers check in at a different table than the non-medical volunteers. This might save time in the morning to get the medical volunteers in really fast and to their station.
It's also important to have volunteer check-in location away from participant registration area so that the volunteer check-in people are in place before other volunteers arrive. They should be in place about an hour before the fair opens to the public, and all other volunteers arrive shortly after that. We recommend having an ambassador come early as well to greet the volunteers as they arrive.
Oh, that's a great idea. Now, some volunteers are going to see the fairs on the news, since 9 News does such a great job with our publicity. So volunteers will just show up the morning of at some 9 health fairs. Those volunteers are considered walk-ins. Now, these walk-ins will need to fill out a paper volunteer registration. We have a form for that. Before going to their station, they have to fill that out. Once all the assigned volunteers have been checked in, then you're going to see where your holes are and you can assign those walk-ins. Now, we should also have a volunteer floater. They can go around and help people take breaks as needed. Now, also because our site is quite large, maybe we should talk about having walkie-talkies. If we don't have all the walkie-talkies available for all our coordinators, we should at least share phone numbers between the coordinators so that we can get each other if we're at far distances of the fair.
What about the volunteer appreciation certificates? Does 9 Health Fair fill those out for us?
No, 9 Health Fair is going to give us blank ones, and then each site has to fill out the volunteer name and the date. Now, the people who run the check-in tables are good people to assign to this task. So once you're finished checking people in, they can actually go around to each of the station and see who wants certificates and fill in their names.
We can also fill out volunteers' names and the date of the fair on the certificate in advance using the Excel spreadsheet of the volunteers from the website, and we can do a merge of the PDF to be able to fill in the names and the date of the fair. Or when our check-in volunteers are done signing in all the volunteers, they can go around to the stations and screenings and hand out certificates to those who would like them. This way we only write on the certificates of volunteers that would like to take them home with them. We need to make sure we have extra certificates for those walk-ins, though. We can print those off the resource guide.
Oh, both very good points. Now, we need to make sure that all our volunteers feel appreciated before and after the fair. We want to have them come back next year, right? Now, I will send them back thank you notes. I'm not sure about timing. Might be handwritten or an email, depending on what works best for our team. I will also go through the volunteer registration list to make sure that I have a complete list of all their information, especially those walk-ins we've been talking about. If we do have walk-in volunteers, we need to make sure that they're appreciated too, and we have their information for next year.
The website has a great volunteer management tool. These are great resources for many of your coordinators. There's a timeline of tests, checklists with step-by-step instructions to check off, and a list of questions to interview volunteers with that we mentioned earlier. There are also training documents and videos that will guide us on how to assign volunteers to a station or screening and use other aspects of the volunteer management tools on the 9 Health Fair website.
Oh, those are all really good things to know about. Now, there are some key points that we need to remember so that we can get through our fair smoothly. We need to maintain communication with our volunteers. This will keep them engaged and interested if we regularly contact them. We need to provide that training that we've talked about for all our volunteers, the videos, the protocols. Now we need to ensure that they have a copy of those protocols prior to the day of the fair and put a copy at their station or their screening. We need to use these volunteer management tools that are on the website that'll really help keep us organized. Now, if we're struggling to find anything on the 9 Health Fair website, I've heard about this website team that they have through 9 Health Fair. Their email is 9healthfairwebteam@gmail.com. That's something we can use if we're struggling. Or we can contact our liaison if we prefer to go through them.
Absolutely. All 9 Health Fair staff are here to help us make sure that our 9 Health Fair is a success. Thank you for your time.